Hello, everyone. Good day, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So, welcome to another Power BI section by UrBizEdge. For today's session, we're having a very special guest by the name of Dara Oladapo. We'll be taking us on the course Azure Cost Insights with Power BI. This session is being brought to you by Enterprise DNA with Power BI Learning Community, powered by UrBizEdge. So, I'll give a brief description of our partner, which is Enterprise DNA. Enterprise journey that basically focus in empowering the most valuable Power BI users to expand their analytic thinking and insight to generate different possibilities. So for us, your BizEdge is a registered Microsoft Excel consulting, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. We specialize in helping company and high-value professionals be on top of their business data. For some, for some of our upcoming trainings, that's our 2022 calendar. 14th to 15th of January, we'll be having our in-depth Excel training, executive dashboard, and business data analysis. Same 14th to 15th of January 2022, we're having big data analysis, Power Query, Power Pivot, and VBA in Excel. On the 18th of January, we'll be having Python for data analysis. So I'll give a brief description of our special guest, Dara Oladapo. Dara is a techie with core focus on Microsoft technology, stack like .NET, Visual Studios, Azure, and Azure DevOps. He enjoys exploring new technology daily to see how we can help improve business processes with technology. His career started at Microsoft, where he was an intern doing technical evangelism. He is currently a Senior DevOps Engineer at myairops in UK and enjoys playing saxophone when he is not writing or deploying application. So we have Dara LinkedIn. He also has a YouTube channel and also has his website. So with no further ado, I'll hand over the section to Dara Oladapo. So Dara, over to you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I hope I'm sharing the right one. And I hope you can see the screen and the transcriptions happening.
Yes.
All right. Transcriptions are necessary for, usability. Not all of us can hear how fast I speak. So we need to have that sort of text showing there for everyone, which is, I think, a very nice feature. Um, all right, so as I've been introduced, my name is Dara Oladapo. I wouldn't dwell so much on introducing myself. You can Google me on Bing, as I used to say to everybody. Just put it in your search engine, Dara Oladapo. You'll find some information about me. If you need to reach out, but of course, I'll drop some links to check me out at the end of the presentation. So as not to waste so much of our time, these captions are a bit wrong, so I might just turn them off. um, yeah, not to waste so much of our time, I'll be talking about Azure Cost Insights with Power BI. And why this topic, you might want to ask me. The main reason I chose this topic, I had the chance to choose my topic, which is something very nice, is currently I work as a engineer in my organization where I'm responsible for deploying and maintaining our applications and infrastructure. And this includes Azure. So we deploy loads of applications to Azure, managing over 500 services thereabout. And it's essential to have a grasp of how much money we're spending and where we're spending that money in the cloud. And we want to look at ways to optimize our costs and ways to ensure that we are not spending money where we're not supposed to. So what I've done is I've taken some of the code we use internally and I've stripped out um, some aspects that are not necessary for a basic demo. So what the code does is essentially try to map our cloud usage to our internal nominal codes. That's cost centers. So we know which department is spending what money. And we know when the invoice comes in, how to settle the invoices and which cost center to bill. But I realized some organizations or maybe even just freelance developers would just like to have a bit of insight into how much you're spending. Where am I spending my money? Yeah, That
I'm not sure if it's
okay. My internet broke off. I think I'm back.
oh, okay. Okay, you're back now.
Okay. Is my screen still on?
Yes, it's still on.
All right, okay. Where did the thing stop?
So you talked about the freelance developers too. We like.
Okay. Okay, you might just want to see where you're spending money so you know how to bill your customers. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be nice. And sometimes you don't want to log into Azure every time, you just want to maybe have it open on a nice TV in your office. You might want to see, oh, wait, this way my money is going. Set a refresh time on it. I know most likely most of us here are mostly Power BI professionals, and you're not an enterprise essentially. And going through the Azure documentation actually set things up might be a bit stressful for you. So what I've done is I've created a very simple demo. I hope it's simple enough as I claim it is. That there's the Power BI Azure app in the App Center that helps you do this, but even I setting it up, it's a bit stressful for me because some of the terminologies I don't even know. So what I've done is I wrote a very simple API, which is an Azure function. Should not cost you more than $1 a month to actually run it if you don't have so much data. So what I've done is I've written that little bit of API, and I think I'm just gonna show that right now. Don't worry if you don't write so much code, I'll give you access to this code. So what I've done is I've written this simple code that takes your billing cycle. So that's from 14th of this month. That's an example I'm giving. 14th of every month to the 13th of the next month. That is my typical billing cycle for one of my subscriptions. And what I do is I go ahead and get the cost management data using the subscription ID, and then I pass in all these arguments. But don't worry if you don't write code, okay? I'm not gonna bore you so much with the code, but I just want to show you where this is coming from. And what I've done there is all this data will be returned as a JSON text. And if you do Power BI a lot, JSON is one of the data you can get. You can call an API endpoint and get JSON back. Another thing I've done is just going to get Postman. So you can write that request into Postman here just to see that sample data. So this is JSON data that you can clean up in Power BI to get insight into it. And what I've done is I've also gone one step ahead to make this into a Power BI file, which I probably would share once I finish cleaning up, thanks to some of my Power BI pros that actually helped me out with this because I don't know so much of Power BI. So this is all my usage data for the last 3 months. Excuse me. This is in JSON, and even this looks boring for me to look at. So I want to see this in a very nice view. And this, I'll show you how I got here. I just want to whet your appetite a little bit before I go into the main show. And this is a little bit of what I've done. Don't blame me if this one as beautiful as what you would do on a normal day, okay? I'm not a Power BI pro, but this is something I would like to generally see. For me, I understand where I'm coming from. So my current cycle, I spent so much more money than I spent in the last cycle. And I spent more even than my last 2 cycles. So this is the date range right there. So September 14 to October 13. And this is from October 14 to November 13. So that is that. So I can look closely and see, oh, this type of resources took all of my money. So I can have it in some nice shady view. And you see, as I click each of them, I actually see how everything changes. It's not a lot to see, but there's loads of data in here. So I can show you what the raw data literally looks like before I get started. Now, before I show you a lot more about that, let me actually show you the steps I took to get there. So let me go back to the PowerPoint slide. I've told you why I'm doing this, because I want a simple way to see data. I want a simple way to see how I'm using cost in Azure. So first thing I need is I need to have a very nice Azure account. I don't spend so much on it. Might just put your credit card. You don't spend so much money because Azure functions ideally do not cost so much to run. For example, I run my tweets automated, and I don't even spend up to $2 a month on it. So the first thing I need is I need to create a service principal in Azure, and this is just a simple command you would need to run one time, not anymore. And you need to get your Azure subscription ID. I will show you how to get that. Install Visual Studio Code. That's for you to be able to actually run the code on your computer. Install Azure Function Call Tools, the .NET SDK, Azure CLI, and of course, our very nice tool here, Power BI Desktop, for you to be able to generate all those charts. So how do you get a subscription ID? How do you create a service principal? Let me show you how that is done. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over into VS Code. I've installed the Azure CLI already, so I wouldn't go through that process. But to do that, you can literally go through the documentation. What I'll do also is I'll give you a link to the source code that I've used for this, so you can extend it if you like to write code. If you don't, you can just use it as this. I'll also keep on updating it as I have more ideas. So to do that, the simple command I need to run, I'll just do a little demo of that. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see more. Do we see this better now? I guess so.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
this command, I'm just going to explain a little bit, is telling Azure Active Directory to create a service principal for role-based access control and give it a name. So this is the name I'm going to give it, Power BI Demo Real-Time. You can give this any name you want, literally. So when I run this command, I would have done AZ login to be able to do this. And what AZ login does is it authenticates me against Azure. So it's literally using this account for me. AZ account show. So it is in this subscription on this tenant. And this is the email address I'm logged in with. I've already done that previously. So what it does for me, I need to take note. Once you run this command, you need to keep this file, this JSON file, you need to keep it somewhere safe, because this password is what you would use to authenticate against Azure in your source code. You also want to keep the app ID. And so the three things you need to keep: the app ID, which is client ID in some cases. You need to keep the password. This is the most important. You cannot get this once you've generated it and it's gone. And also your tenant ID, very essential. These three things you need to be able to do this. Of course, if you forget the password or you don't have access to it anymore, you can go generate a new one or create a new service principal. So what I've done is created a service principal. What is a service principal? A service principal is an entity, a sort of impersonation entity in Azure that lets you run commands against Azure, so you don't need to log in as a person every single time you do that. So I can use this in my desktop apps, in my mobile apps, in my Power BI apps, in my Power Apps, or anything else. So to ensure that I'm fully secure, what I'll do is I'll copy this. I use Notepad a lot, so I'll put that in a Notepad file. Actually, I've done that previously. So this is the one I saved the other time. So this is the one I'm currently using. Of course, if you try to use it, it wouldn't work for you because you need to still be logged in. So you keep this very safe, but I wouldn't save this because I already have it running for me. So coming back to the code, what I've done now, after I've gotten that service principal, is to get my subscription ID. My subscription ID is this one here when I do AZ account show. But if you don't want to go through the command, it's also possible to retrieve that from the Azure portal. So if you go to portal.azure.com and you go over into your subscriptions, I have a couple of subscriptions, but I'm going to use this for example. You can see the number here. Let me zoom a little bit into that. The number here matches what I have over here in the terminal. So that is a subscription ID I want to target. You can use another subscription ID if you want to target another subscription to monitor. Okay, so let's go back to the code. So this little bit of code, what it does is it lets me go ahead and do that. Of course, I should have removed this one. I don't know what's still doing there. I'll need to clean this code up. Okay, I literally wrote this code how long ago? 19 hours ago. I like to prepare my code fresh. Who likes to prepare their demos fresh? I think I do. I like that a lot. Okay, so that's all I've done. And also, because of security is essential in anything we do. There's a little bit of file if you're using the source code in, I'll give you the link to the source code in a few moments now. If you're using that, you need to create a file in your code called local.settings.json. Because this is not committed to GitHub for security's sake because it contains credentials. And I don't want you to be able to use my credentials. So you need to create a file called local.settings.json inside the same place where all your code lives, like literally here. You have to create that file in here. But of course, when you create a new Azure function, it generates that file for you, but it's not committed to the source code reposition. Now, you might want to ask me, you promised us you're going to give us the code. Yes, I did. And this is where you get the code that I am currently using. You get that at bit.ly/az cost code. Let me try to see if I can put that in chat for us. bit.ly/az cost code. Yeah, it's not the prettiest of code, trust me. It's supposed to be a simple demo. I don't want to complicate my life. So I made the code as simple as possible. And note that you can do this in any language you want, okay? I'm just calling Azure REST APIs. You can use Python, JavaScript, PowerShell to do this. C# is just my own preferred language. That is why I use C#. You can use literally any language you want to perform all these operations. Okay, now, let me show you what that finally looks like now in Power BI. So what I've done is, how do I get this data? How do I clean it up? Okay, so you go to, let me literally create a new report. Okay, I'm bringing that up in a few moments. All right, so this is my Power BI screen. I go to get data. Let me minimize this. Okay, I go to get data. It asks me where I want to get my data from. Let me just quickly grab this URL from Postman. So if I run this just to show that it still works, I'm just going to run that query again. So what I've done is there's a function code that I have. You need to get this from the Azure Function app that you deploy. And then I put a query for start dates and end dates. So this will be the subscription cycle end dates, the subscription cycle start dates. And I have all this bunch of data in there. So I've gotten my URL. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Other. I'm going to go over to Web, and I click on Connect. So once I do that, I paste in my URL. I OK that. And I get this bunch of data, but this is not clean enough, okay? Because it's got all this bunch of stuff that I still need to expand. If I try to use this one in my, what's it called? In my dashboard, it's gonna be messy. So I need to first clean the data. Of course, that's what we Power BI professionals do. We first clean the data before we actually use it. So that is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do that real fast. Okay, so you see, this is what it literally looks like. It's messy. If I try to do that, it's just a bunch of gibberish. Literally, this doesn't make enough sense. This doesn't make enough sense to anybody. Even me, it doesn't make enough sense. Anything I do here just looks like rubbish. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to remove this data source. You know what? I'm going to go over to transform the data. And to save a bit of time, not to show you all my clicking throughs, what I'm going to do is I would modify this using Power Query. Okay, just a moment. Let me grab the Power Query code. Disclaimer, I did not write this Power Query code. One of my Power BI friends did that for me. Okay, so I copy that. So in here, inside my transform data screen, I go to view. Let me zoom a little bit into that. You know what? I should do live zoom. Okay, I go over into view and I go to, where's my mouse? Yeah, advanced editor. And I override the code here. I put that code in chat for us, no worries. And I click on done over here. So this is the code I put in. You know what? I'm going to put that code also in the, what's it called? In the GitHub repository, you can get the code from, so you can just run this if you're just beginning Power BI. But if you're a professional, this code will probably mean nothing to you and you can write much better one. So I click on done over here. And that's a bit of transformation I actually want to do. Now, my columns are named not what I want. Can I zoom into Power BI? Nah, not quite. Okay, but you can rename your stuff. You can rename all these things here. That's all I'm doing, renaming the columns. You can do all this renaming, but I've done that already in my original code. So I would not save this one now. So what I'm going to do next, I will not save this also, is I'll go back into my working dashboard. Okay, and what I've done simply, I'll just create a new tab for that to show you how I brought this data in. So I've renamed my columns. I've renamed all these fields and I've hidden the ones I do not need. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting my resource type against the total cost. Okay, and I want this to be a pie chart, if that's the right name for it. You can see here, I can see that namespaces took 53% of my money. Disks, that's for my virtual machines that run on the back end, they took about 46% of my money. So I know where my money is going now. I can use another chart, say for example, let me make this a sort of bar chart. Okay, I'm gonna put in the data, total cost against resource type. So I can literally make this as beautiful as I want now. And this is the bit of stuff I've done. This makes a little bit more sense. So I can view my data also by a month. You know what? I'm gonna put this down here so I can have a bit of better view up in here. So up here, let me add another chart, stack bar chart. I'm gonna make that a little bit wider. I'm not the best of Power BI designer, so don't blame my designs. It's horrible. And then I'll use the date range effects. So I can see now that this date range, from this date to this date, I spent this much money. And as I click through, as the months actually increase, I would see more data. But what I've done in code is I'm only getting 3 months worth of data. Where's VS Code now? I can't see VS Code anymore. Have I closed it? I'm not sure. Let me see my taskbar. Okay, I found it. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting 3 months worth of data. Cost manage, no, not this, not this. I think it's this. It's definitely this. So let me zoom a little bit out so we can see it at a view. So I'm using all the Azure REST APIs here. So I'm getting just 3 months worth of data. In this code, I'm going this current month, the other month, and the other past month. Okay, so I can go way back. So this is month minus 1, month minus 2. You can go as far back as you want. It's all depending. You can modify this code to have a new set of time range. Depending on your use case, you can just have 1 month. You can just have 1 week. It is all now left to you to decide how you want your data to look like. All right, so that's a little bit about what I've been able to do. Now, you might want to ask me, how does this apply practically? You can literally just go to Azure or use the paid extensions in the marketplace. Now, for me, I want to spend as little money as possible getting stuff done. And all this stuff are open out there in the world today. I don't want to pay money to be able to do this. Well, maybe in the future I might monetize this, but currently I don't want to do that. I just want to get my data out in a very simple and effective way. And this helps me do that every single month on month when I'm asked to map our Azure resources, our Azure costs to our internal nominal codes. Now, I've stripped out the code where we do nominal code mapping, but essentially what that uses is it gets all that data and puts that into an Azure table, Azure storage table, and then I connect Power BI to that Azure storage table. But in this case, I'm just using an API endpoint, getting the data in JSON format, and then just pushing out there. It's cleaner in an Azure table or an SQL database table, but for the purpose of this demo, you just make it as simple as that. So you can literally go ahead and extend this code as much as you want. You have access to the code, it's open source, and you can do literally anything you want to it. So I spent about 25 minutes talking all about the code I've written and shown you what my very simple Power BI dashboard looks like. And I think it would be a good time to ask if there are questions. Thanks very much for listening to me.
Wow, awesome. So thanks, Dara. So anyone with any question in the audience can drop it in the chat box. Anyone with any question? Should I start calling names now? Michael, do you have any questions, Alex?
So I have actually, and it's to say, I know also too that at least that's a crude way I sometimes try to dig around. So I know if I go to the Azure subscription and then I go to the cost, then there's this portion on cost. Then I want to ask, I think there's also like a download from there. And I think maybe some people too, that's what they have in mind. So my question is, for you not to use that, I'm sure there is a lot more things that one gets out of this other approach. So for people like me, who does the way we're doing it, who look at it and thinking, what are the advantages this one over that one?
Okay, so yeah. So if you're going to the Azure portal to click download a CSV file or a PDF file, you have to do that every single month. Okay. For me, what I literally need to do is I can set this as a timer trigger, not an HTTP trigger this time around. So every month, and I'm talking about extending this now, because what we do now is we put that in Azure table and I connect the Azure table to that. And what I can do now is I can literally write a mobile app for my accounting department to connect to that data source or display the Power BI dashboard for them. My CEO might want to see how much am I spending and not have to go literally every time go download an invoice. It just goes to Power BI dashboard, refresh data. It sees stuff in there. That is one of the use cases I think of it every time. Yes, you can go to the Azure portal, download, but would you want to be doing a continuous download every single month? That is a manual process. And one thing I preach against most time is if you do it or preach for is if you have to do it 1-2 times the same way, think of automating it. So I want to go get my data for the past 3 months. I want to see it on the dashboard. What is the best way for me to do that without having to log into portal every single time? I write an API for it. And then I can connect it to anything, literally anything I want. The Power BI dashboard, a mobile app, a desktop app, a web app, a notification system that sends an email that, oh, this is how much you spent. And also, particularly for our own organization, it's sort of critical to be able to get the data and map it internally, because what normally happened before was we had to map this manually, which is a pain. So you download the invoice, you map it, download the invoice, you map, download the invoice, you map it. And these nominal codes don't change. So what we've done is we get that data, push to the Azure table with the nominal code, and then I can present that to the CEO. I can present that to the accounts department. I can present that to my manager, and then everybody's happy at the end of the day without having to go to the Azure portal every time and try to rack their head about understanding where their money go, where the money goes. Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
I
so
see the other dimensions to it. Thanks a lot.
Sure thing.
Okay, so Michael, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so we have some questions in the chat box. So for Mikey said, you can share the report/dashboard from Power BI with all those that need access to. So it's asking, can you share your report on dashboard? Okay, so
yeah, I can share the Power BI file. You can share the link, put it on somewhere. You can put it in your internal company portal.
Okay. So from Thomas said, I have a short question about how to manage the cost coming from our data factory pipeline.
Maybe a bit more explanation on that.
Thomas, can you like put more make your question more detailed, please?
Maybe I'll even
you can make him a speaker or something. Okay.
Make him a presenter. And I see one of our chief in the house, Francis. Maybe he too has contributions or questions.
Okay, so from Insaka, he said, Dara, how can we make use of other apps that you mentioned that we need to install?
These are mostly developer or DevOps-ish apps, so you don't need to actually use it every time. Once you get that app deployed, you don't need it except you want to continue using it from this. For example, let me just go to that slide that contains that. The Visual Studio Code, that's for people to write code every day. So you want to write your C# code, your Python code, your Python notebooks, you can use that easily. Azure Function Call Tools is for me to be able to write the code that I just showed you and be able to deploy it. Azure.NET SDK is for me to be able to write the code in C#. If you're not writing C#, you probably use Python or JavaScript or PowerShell. The Azure CLI is for me to be able to run Azure commands. For example, the AZADSP creates a command. I use the Azure CLI to be able to do that. And where do you download that from? If you literally type in, if you go to Microsoft website or just type it in your browser, install Visual Studio Code or VS Code, it will give you, just look for the Microsoft link. In there, you will get the right link to be able to download it. Or maybe what I'll do is in the documentation that I'll upload, maybe tonight or tomorrow, I'll put all the links in there also.
So Thomas, you can speak now. You're made a presenter now.
Yeah. Hello, Dara. Thank you so much for the lesson, by the way. Sorry, I'm a junior developer, and I try to find a solution in a proper way in case how I can manage the monthly bill that's coming from our use or our data factory pipeline. I saw that you use in a specific way an Azure function. I start, let me say, this type of approach using a blob storage, and after they take the data and move on our Azure Data Factory. I just ask you if it's possible to extract in this way that you can show us, like the JSON that's coming from to the weekly based JSON information about the billing for our pipeline, and in this way to show that using Power BI.
Yes, you can.
Sorry. Maybe I'm not. I'm Italian. I'm not English native languages, but
okay.
I just know if it's possible this way to show a weekly report in order to understand how we add the cost for our pipeline?
Yes, it's definitely possible. What you need to do is, let me go back to Power BI dashboard. You can literally filter the resource type. So if you look closely here, I see namespaces, that service bus that is taking most of my money.
Okay.
So if in your case, you'll probably see data factory here. So I know that last month I did spend so much money. This month I'm spending so much money on namespaces. What have I changed? What have my developers spun up? Can I delete some of them? Those are the questions that will come after you see how much this has been, especially in terms of the charts. 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago, this month, I'm spending way more. What has changed? What new resources have I deployed? That is a question you can ask after that. So you can literally filter this if you want.
Okay.
You can use the filter button here to filter what data you want to show. I'm not the Power BI pro, but you can literally do a lot of filtering in here to decide what data you want to see. And there's some sort of queries you can also run against them. I'm not so sure where that is now. You can literally ask questions with this. People like Mike or DJ Folari will be able to do that, where they run, literally ask questions on these dashboards.
So, Dara, the visualization is a place they would Q&A. So, you can use the part. Your visualization part. Your visualization at the right-hand side. Right. No, just go to where your fields are.
Here?
Okay. Your right hand, yeah, is a that looks like a chart. Up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you can ask questions. Interesting. How much did I spend on namespaces last month?
Hello,
Not
Dara.
my question.
Not from there.
Yes.
Not from there.
Oh.
It popped out. A visualization came out. Yeah, from there.
That's cool.
Okay, they understand my question, but of course it can be better.
It will try to map it against the names of fields in your data. So, but I even have some questions too. So when you are set for extra questions, my own questions, I pile them up.
Okay, so there's a question also from the chat box also. So Mike said in your code, you are pulling data by month. Once you get to Power BI, can the name range be changed by weeks or dates? If so, can you change the code from the statement? Can you change code by pulling a statement from your data?
So what I've done is the data I have in the query, the URL query is for the billing cycle. What could change even is I can modify the code to create an extension of it to specify the month, the dates, and what kind of stuff to get out of it. So currently now I'm getting data for 3 months. What I could do is I can put a query, say how many months, month count equals 4, and then the code mod I'll need to modify the code definitely to make it better and more extensible. So you can literally say, how many months of data do I want to get? Or do I want to get data by week? How many weeks of data do I want to get? This can be done. So if you write code, you can help me make the code better. But currently, it's just getting 3 months of data with your billing cycle date ranges.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answered Michael's question. So, Michael, Olafose, you said you wanted to ask me some questions.
Yes, so plenty questions.
Okay, let's just off my mic.
Number one is I've known Dara for many years now, and the things he does, most people, is very difficult to explain to other people, and people always have interest. So people always like to know about new tech, especially guys who are looking to transition or have like an option card, like, okay, I know that whatever field I'm in is not the future. I just want to begin to explore these other tech spaces, and maybe when I leave the country or need to switch career, I will be switching to where there's a whole lot of value. Let me use that word. So, so Dara, I would like you to tell us about what DevOps is really. Most people don't still understand it. I don't even think I understand. Just know it exists, kind of.
That's a very good one.
That's the DevOps. So I want him to tell all of us, what the magic they do.
Okay, even some of us in the field don't actually know the full definition, but I think I'll give this by Microsoft definition of it. And I'm not trying to sell Microsoft to you, okay? And I think it's the most practical one I've had so far, and that's the one that I've stuck with me for years. They say DevOps is the union of people, okay, processes, and products to continuously deliver value to end users. Let me explain that. People are every stakeholder involved in the software development lifecycle. Users, product managers, programmers, database admin, testers, QA engineers, anybody literally that is involved in the software process, from usage to building to deployment to management, every single person, that is people. Processes, how do you write code and push it out? Do you right-click publish from Visual Studio? Do you use a tool to automate your deployments? Do you do automated testing? What are the processes that take place in pushing your code out to the end users? Do you take a disk to your users? Do you give them a link? Do you give them an exe file packaged in a WinRAR file? And the product is essentially the software you're using. So the union of all the stakeholders, process that the people involved go through to release the product. And the end goal of this is to continuously deliver value to it. So if I have a product to deliver to Michael tomorrow, what are the processes I go through to deliver that app to him? And who are the people involved in delivering the apps? I'll talk about the programmers, I'll talk about the UI designers, the testers, the architect, the database engineers, the pen tester, this hacker, to try to know if my app is secure. Every single person. And that's what DevOps is. Okay? The people, the process, and essentially the product. So it's an amalgamation of those three coming together. And the end goal is to be able to get value. And what do I mean by value? You want to continuously use the app. I write an app that can add 1 + 5 together, and I give it to Michael. Michael must continuously be able to use the app and be happy with it. And what are the processes I use to ensure that I release updates to that 1 + 5 app every single time that makes Mike want to come back to use the app? That is why you sometimes prefer to use some apps over some other apps, because you see new features every day. Today, you go to TikTok, you see this new feature. You go to Instagram, you see this new feature. It makes you come back to the app. That means you are continuously hooking the users to use the app. So this comes in many phases. It might be through monitoring their usage of a particular feature by delivering more, or seeing what features they are not using and improving the experience in using those features. That is essentially what DevOps, and there are a lot of people involved in DevOps, not just the techies writing all the deployment code. I'm a DevOps engineer. The software engineers are also important. The users of the system are also very equally important. The product owner is very important. The customer success manager is important. The support engineers are important. The testers are important. So DevOps brings all those people into one set of mindset or communication link to ensure that the process of getting the apps regularly delivering value is smooth. That is essentially what DevOps is. Now, I, as a DevOps engineer, I look after getting the code that the developers write, get it deployed to the environment, get it in the hands of the users. That is my job. And what I do is I also monitor those things. I fix problems that happen on the servers. And if there's something I cannot fix that is code related, the developers know. And I work with them hand in hand to ensure that the process is smooth. I make developers' life easier. They make my life easier also by writing proper code. And I work with the product owner to ensure that, oh, we have a new customer coming on board tomorrow. How do I deploy to them? Or do I use existing deployments? How do I make the process better? If you are deploying in 50 minutes, how do I reduce that time to 30 minutes? How do I reduce it to 5 minutes? Those are questions I ask myself as a DevOps engineer. Questions a developer would ask is, how can I write better code that is faster? Questions a product owner would ask is, how do I ensure my customers are happy with the products I'm releasing to them? Testers is, the code these developers write, this new version, does it affect the previous version? Any breaking changes? And those are all the questions that we all bring to the table. Everybody communicates with each other. In the previous generations of software releases, it was not so. So DevOps was introduced to remove that friction and ensure that every single person works together in harmony in the organization. I hope that explains it.
Right. So this looks like a production line, looks like a big factory, like you guys are manufacturing Toyota or manufacturing Honda, and then there's like all the automation line, different engineers, different people. Yeah, making things scary also. It makes it look like like if you are not a Google, if you are not a Microsoft, if you are not a I don't know, all these big companies that are fully into tech, you know, maybe the company I work in it's I don't know, let me just use random examples. Maybe the company I work in is a GT Bank, it's a Dangote Cement, it's a Dangote Fly, it's a, maybe let me even say a small company that we manufacture biscuits, and then we have an engineer, we have a software so that at least we can be designing software that our internal department use, maybe for business process automation and optimization. Are you going to say that we cannot just hire like 4 people and just say, okay, you be design UI and UX person, this is the full stack engineer, and then, you know, one more person will be like one other role. And the way you are saying it looks like we have to go and hire like 100 people, and then, you know, there are DevOps, these, and DevOps, like 20 DevOps people, you know, each different, and there's going to be UI, there's penetration tests, there's QA, QC tests. Like, what are we manufacturing?
Yeah, funny thing is, DevOps, it's not about the number of people. Okay, so yeah, it sounds, the way I explained this sounds like, okay, so I have 50, 100, 1,000 people to do the job. The answer is, if you only have 2, you can still implement DevOps processes. It's about the mindset and the way of thinking, literally. So it's not about having all those people, okay? It's just about making process simpler. Yeah, in the future, when you improve this process, your customers are happier, you can increase your customer base, okay? But essentially, what you want to think of thinking about DevOps is making processes smoother. So if you're a one developer team, how do you make your own life easier? Think about it, and then pick and choose what aspects you will do to make your life easier. So if you normally right-click deploy, and it takes you 15 minutes to do that, how can you improve that 15 minutes process yourself? Okay. So that tomorrow you can deploy in 5 minutes, and those 10 minutes you can use writing better code. So it's a mindset that has to live in each person. If you're a 1,000 person organization, or a 1-person organization, or a 50-person organization, the way it applies to you would be different. As Microsoft has tens of thousands of engineers, their process will be different. The way they think about DevOps will be different from an organization that only hires 3 people as developers, maybe a very small car selling shop that they only have a website where they sell their cars. It's probably even just 4 developers, maybe not even developers, just 1 developer, 1 person that thinks is a developer, the other person that thinks is a tester. But how do they make the process easier? How do they make rolling out updates faster and better? How do they get customer feedback on their website? How can they make the website work better for the people who come to the website? Or maybe it's an app. How do they make the app better for their users? It's just a matter of thinking. They might not need to hire a DevOps engineer. They might need to hire a product manager. Maybe they have to. But starting from where you are as a small person organization, first thing is, when you think of DevOps, there are a number of benefits, which I probably should have explained, is faster time to market. So if it takes you 15 minutes to do stuff, if you apply some of the DevOps practices that you can reduce that to 7.5 minutes. In the future, maybe to 3 minutes. In the future, maybe to 1 minute. So if you're a one-man developer team, a 50-person developer team, a 1,000-man developer team, different aspects of the DevOps practices would apply to you, and pick and choose the ones you like to ensure that your processes are smoother.
I see that Mikey has his hand up. I've made you a presenter. You can unmute and ask your question. So maybe your question is...
So Mikey, you can unmute now.
You are still muted. I see you are trying
Hi, Mikey. Okay.
Great.
Hi. Maybe what I've heard, and Dara, correct me if I'm wrong, what I've heard is, right, part of DevOps also includes the help with that processes is you're making more small changes and delivering those versus a whole lot of one big change that changes that app, correct?
Yeah, it's one of the things we talk about in DevOps world also. So you don't want to push. So I'll use an example, a very good example that will probably know a lot. Some of us use Windows Vista. Some of us, we were born in the age of Windows 8, Windows 10, where Windows was way better than it was. So what usually happens with Windows is they go in, for some months and years, write the code, and then give us a disk to install. Yeah. That process did involve we users. But Microsoft learned from that mistake. So what they do is, when they start development of a new version of Windows, maybe even Windows 13 is in development already, I don't know. But let's take Windows 10 as an example, the previous version of Windows. What happens is, when they have a build ready for this, what they do is they tell us, okay, are you interested in testing Windows with us as users? So they introduce the Windows Insider program. So they say, you people, you users, we want to hear your feedback on how this thing works. So what they do is they have a base build, okay, that ensures that the basic functional parts are working. And then what they do is they add a little bit of feature, roll out an insider build. They tell us, oh, dear insiders, a new build is available. Go ahead and download and test it. That's a little bit of change. And even that little bit of change that they give to us would have gone through many iterations internally. So I have 5,000 lines of code. I don't introduce another 5,000 lines and break a lot of stuff. I want to introduce 10 lines. Deploy test. Does it work? Yes. Do 10 more lines. Does it work? Yes. Do 50 more. Does it work? Yes. Remove 50 lines of code because the code is not optimal here. Does it still work? Yes. Rather than having to add, delete, then you have 5,000 files changed. And then you have no idea what has changed. That is one of the things we preach in DevOps also. Make a little bit of change, test, deploy. Does it still work? Does it affect other features? If yes, if it's good, if it's all green, move on. If not, reiterate over that before you go to the next step.
So another question I have is, and thanks for this. Now I understand DevOps. I can go and do a webinar where they will invite me to talk on DevOps. I'll just control everything I've said, and they will be like, "Hey, this guy is good." I'll be like, "Yes, I'm actually good." And they will not know I'm standing on the shoulders. In fact, I'm really standing on your shoulder. So the other question I have is, I know you are you might think that maybe I'm exaggerating, but compared to the rest of us, Azure like back to front, front to back, right to left, upside down, downside up, the way you are looking at the camera. But that's what it looks like compared to the many of us. So the question I want to ask is twofold. Number one is the way Microsoft is, adding new features, sometimes even binning some old features. It's almost like what many of us used to be afraid of sometimes about Google, where they will do a product, you're using it, and then they will say they are discontinuing. But like, what about the 100 million of us that are using it? It don't matter that much. Like, maybe there's a bigger picture they have in mind. But I've experienced a few of it that sometimes I'm very careful when I see Microsoft just say there's a new tool on Azure. Like, first of all, stay away. I'll be watching it from afar because, maybe I've done all of my learning and testing, and then I'm like, yeah, finally I've got something to work. And then I hear that they've done one massive overhaul of it, and maybe there's now version 2 that will need me to being in version 1 or whatever I did. So for those of us that we are not full-time into this space and we just want to see how we can learn a few things, use it to increase our productivity, let it be working automatically, move on. How can we avoid, I know there will be a pattern to it. It looks like madness to some of us, but those inside, they understand it's a trend. That's why I want to ask you. So how can we even know, how can we be able to use these tools, the Azure function you mentioned? The reason I've not used the Azure function is because of that singular thing. I know if I'm going to use it, I can watch so many YouTube videos, take some paid courses, and just be copy pasting what I'm learning, use Stack Overflow, and achieve something that will work for me. But then 2 months from now, I heard they've changed it drastically, and what I've done is not working. I have to go and learn again. So how can we use these tools that I'm here in Azure that helps people like me, people who are in data analysis but are not code heads? How can we use them and avoid that trap? So because I know your answer will be comprehensive, let me just add the second one. The second one is I keep seeing other tools too that I know they are intended for use by people in data space. So there's the HDI Insight, there's the Azure Data Lake, Data Factory, Data Catalog. There are many of all those tools that even I'm interested in the blockchain, but the thing is, there are so many other tools that people who deal with numbers should look at, right? From your experience, which are the tools that you say, if you know you work in this data space, SQL or BI or anything, take a look at these tools, like just make sure that you are familiar and learn this thing going into next year. So those are my 2 questions. I hope I've not molded them up.
Yeah, on your first question, in the space we live and work in the cloud, or basically any tech tool today, really, it moves so fast. I must say that moves like, even it's faster than light, I must say. Well, not literally faster than light, but they move very fast. Like, you do something today, literally tomorrow, that thing is invalid. But one thing I think I like with Microsoft Tech these days, okay, is that they try to introduce backward compatibility into this thing they build. For example, I can still write C#5 code in .NET 6 and it should still work. That's for a programmer side. Also for the cloud tools, yes, there might be some breaking changes, maybe for security reasons in some old code you've written compared to today, but mostly what I've seen, and this is from experience, and I'm not trying to overhype a company or whatever, I don't use other technology stack. I must confess that straight up, so I don't know what it's like in that world. You can take literally a code of 20 years old and deploy it to an Azure service and it works. No changes needed. Well, I've not used other cloud, so I don't know if that is the case over there. But one thing to also notice, in some cases, it might not just work out of the box. So what they've introduced is some sort of migration tool from that tech to this tech, from this old tech to this new tech. And even if there'll be breaking changes, it's always in the documentation, which I think it's a very good thing for them also. They've made these documentations open source. So if you see a breaking change in a version of stuff you're using, you go put it in that doc, raise an issue on GitHub, and they will fix it for you. That is one improvement I've seen over the last 5 years, which is really very massive. For example, I'll give you a practical example. I was talking to Microsoft Partner SDK, I think 3-ish years back. It's a massive SDK. They make changes literally like every 2-3 months-ish, and a new build will literally almost break previous ones. Maybe it's better now. So what I did was the documentation was just missing a little bit of an S in the code sample. Your copy paste, it does not work. It's not the fault of the person who wrote documentation. Of course, just type in, you forget, you commit, you push to prod, and then everybody's happy. I realized that bit of mistake. I fixed it, and hopefully it helped many other people. So one thing I do is when I find the issue, if it's something I can change immediately, I change it, I raise a pull request. It's up to them to fix it. Most likely, they actually do it within the hour or within the next 2-ish days. If it's something you can't fix, we raise an issue, and they will look at it. So that's one thing I really like this day. So I would say don't be afraid to come and do this new tech stuff that Microsoft is always shouting about, they most likely would not kill it off these days, because before they even make it in public preview, they've done some sort of test with their top customers, and they feel it's something people need. If they're even gonna kill it off at all, it's probably because there's a better product for it that they are replacing it with. But most likely they don't kill stuff up that much anymore. And yeah, I think that sort of answers that. Then as for data tools on the cloud, well, because I work in the data space, I don't know so much about the tools, but I'll say this from the top of my head, and I might be totally wrong here, okay? But I think the ones that have some bit of things that might interest people, log analytics is one thing, which I think they are clean off. I'm not sure now, but if not, definitely look at log analytics. Is very good, especially if you're in the ops space, data ops space, where you want to see insights about resources and relate it with management level people. SQL data warehouse. I don't know if that's the official name. Data warehouse is one thing to look at also. Azure Monitor is also one thing to look at, because it literally looks at all your resources on the cloud. I think it's called SQL Data Warehouse. And of course, one thing, I think there's a machine learning service also in Azure. I'm not so sure of anymore now. It's been some years since I looked in that. So there's you can build some machine learning models on the cloud. Yeah, I think those would be it for me. I don't know so much in that space.
Awesome.
I'm done with my questions.
Wow.
The usual questions, right? I think we've used.
Yeah. So Dara, you remember I asked you, like, we're going to ask you 2 questions towards the end of the section. So you tell us how you started your DevOps journey, and what advice do you have for people starting out?
I wanted to say, Tim, what about the prize one? Which one do you want?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's do the prize one first.
Which one do you prefer? Okay, the prize.
Let's do the prize one first.
Okay.
So I asked how many
so
questions?
These are just one.
So
one. The participants will put the answer in the chat box. Anyone that I think is correct, just like it.
Okay. The first one I think is correct, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So fastest finger first, it is there. Okay. What shall my question be? Okay. This is gonna be a bit hard. So if you're not listening, you will most likely I'll type the question and I'll put it in chat. I'm just trying to cook it up. Okay, question. Is my spelling wrong? I think my spelling is wrong for that. Okay, question in chat. Fastest finger first. Fastest right finger first.
I'm not qualified, but I think I know the answer. I remember the explanation. And then now you explained that we need to even create, put it in that same folder of that our VS Code.
Mm-hmm. You're on the right track, but sadly you don't qualify. Okay, fastest right finger.
Get it. Just type. You've seen the question. Let me read it in case. Though you need to type the answer in the chat box, so you better move to the chat box. Why do I not have local.settings.json committed into the GitHub code? So that was a question. And anybody? So you're waiting for your answers in the chat box.
Okay, and I can go ahead and answer the
2 questions.
Okay, so how did I start my DevOps career? Well, funny story. I didn't even know there was DevOps until I was a developer for about 3-ish years. I think it just came as me trying to explore tools. Okay, then I came across Visual Studio Online. And I realized I could commit code, push code, and it just works. And I started experimenting. Then I learned more, experimented a bit more, experimented a bit more, then tried to deploy real life projects using that flow. Because previously, I knew about Azure a little bit then. So I right click deploy from Visual Studio, which worked. But I was like, nah, there should be a better thing. Then I stumbled on these tools here and there. And then I just started learning from there. Then this hype, when you work for Microsoft, you're a techie, they be like, you're a developer. You can do anything developer related. And then I started getting projects around the DevOps space. And then I became a DevOps consultant. Then I was like, okay, I think this DevOps thing is gonna really work out. And I decided to get at it full head on. And I haven't looked back since then. So I would probably say I came across it from experimenting all around the space. And also, of course, I got a lot of mentorship when I was starting out my career also, so it helped me quite a lot. Maybe that's not the right kind of answer, but I'll probably have to write a blog post or do a video on it when I gather my thoughts together. But that's the summary of it, really. I was experimenting and trying to share knowledge. That's essential. Experimenting and sharing knowledge. Then I was like, okay, this might be the right fit for me, because I now realized that was actually really a career title. And I was like, okay, this is going to work out fine. And then I've been at it now full time for about 4-5-ish years as a DevOps engineer. Yeah, I train, I do other things, but that is like the core of what I do now. I still write code, I still do other things, but that is where I'll always come back to. Advice I'll give to anyone starting out as a DevOps engineer or in the DevOps space at all, I would say be ready to unlearn stuff. And why do I say this? Things you know this week could be invalid in 2 weeks. Things you know today could be invalid tomorrow. So you continuously learn and increase your knowledge, and be ready to come to the fact that what you know today might not be the right thing tomorrow. But what will stick with you is your understanding of the fundamentals, your problem-solving skills, and your tenacity at getting things to work. So be ready to unlearn, be tenacious, be ready to explore new things, and improve the processes you currently have. That is, I think, a bit of advice I would give to anyone starting out. And also, look out for people in the industry you can ask questions from. That is another thing. Yeah, I think that's it.
Wow. Oh, you just summarized everything. Awesome. I think nobody got your answer so far.
Okay, so I guess no winner this week.
Is my question too hard, didn't
Even the
So,
people
Dara
who had
Oladapo,
questions during the presentation, they became quiet during the question time. But not a problem.
Okay, I think I have an answer.
Okay.
I got an answer. Okay. Yes, first answer, right answer. Yep. And Mikey got it.
Great. So Mikey, please email us your name at webinar at UrBizEdge. I'm typing it, so just send to us. And what you want for yourself is a free pack, a free training pack from Enterprise DNA. I think it's worth about $500 and something. And plus many other things that they make available to the community of learners on their platform. So once you email us your name, we automatically have your email. We'll do what we need to do to ensure your prize gets to you. So it's been a wonderful session. And Temidayo, I don't know if you let you close the session.
Okay. So Dara, thank you very, very, very much.
Thanks for having me.
And have a lovely night rest. Everyone, thank you. And have a wonderful week ahead tomorrow. Bye.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.